What's going on, everybody? It's Saul Sunforge here for Dungeons and Taverns. How's everybody doing? I promised a video at the end of my last video for the settlements, and I did make the video, but the computer froze, it corrupted the file, all this other nonsense. So I just had to go remake the video, and I took some notes, and so you'll be able to see those like in the background or whatever. I don't really need them too much, I suppose, but I like to use them sometimes for bigger topics anyway. So you could come back and reference them if you wish to. So if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Saul Sunforge. We go ahead and cover most things tabletop, a lot of homebrew, a lot of homebrew ideas, quests. I make maps I give them out for free, character guides for Dungeons and Dragons. Although we're trying to lean away from Dungeons and Dragons, make it system agnostic, or in the future my own system that I'm coming up with, which kind of right now is a little bit on hold because I've been doing a lot more work, but when I get back to it, I'm going to hit it hard. And I still, even when I'm working, just record ideas into my phone and then just write them down later on. So I still am working on it to a degree. But if you're new here, welcome. I appreciate all of you. And if you enjoy this video, at the end of it, hit that subscribe button. So when you're playing tabletop role-playing games, you understand you're playing a game, but the goal is to play the game so well or have so much fun in the game that for a while there you kind of forget that it is a game, and you kind of forget your real life problems. Or at least for me, that's how it goes. I don't know how it is for everybody. I don't want to speak for everybody, of course. But there's a part of you that's in those games, and so as a dungeon master or equivalent, your goal, or what your goal should be, is to provide the best game that you feel that you can, and constantly keep getting better. I like to try to give people tips in order to help that journey. So my first tip is, for a quick settlement, you don't need to go and make absolutely everything in a city. Just make something, just a few places that the party is going to go to. A small hamlet or village or whatever. You make it according to the populations. We'll get over those here in a few moments here. But you want to have a place for them to eat and drink, a place for them to sleep. And ideally, maybe a place for them to pray, like even just if it's a temple, just like a small hut or something like that with some incense or candles, and maybe a small statue of a deity or something like that, or a system agnostic where you could take out your belongings and place them, and then pray and then leave. You want to have those types of things at minimum. But there's certain, settlement sizes that the party probably isn't going to be going to. We'll cover those first. But I want to give you some settlement starting ideas. Why a settlement may be started in the first place. And the biggest one, depending on what type of campaign you have, I guess, religious persecution. You can also do magical persecution or scientific persecution if you wish to, depending on the era that you're going for or the vibe that you're going for. But people escaping those types of settlements may often congregate together, and then they'll eventually, form more permanent establishments, and then that will grow out from that. War survivors or deserters, the winning or losing side, just what it doesn't matter. It's probably usually the losing side mostly that has the deserters, unless the morale of the winning side is actually terrible. But winning helps your morale in war. So it probably would be the losing side. But they get together, they form their own places, put up, temporary barricades initially, then more permanent of a structure. Or they could be, traveling, to try to keep away from the lawman, essentially, because they deserted. So there might be some trouble for that in their settlement that they're originated from. So they're constantly moving like nomadic barbarian tribes, and nothing is permanent. They live in tents and maybe sticks and straw huts and things, And they have their farming animals that they bring with them from location to location. They may move according to season, or they may move according to the farming needs of the animals when the area is grazed out. Oasis in the desert is a really great one that I like to use. And like all places in the desert filter into this one oasis from wherever the location they may come through. They end up passing by this oasis as if they're trying to get out of the desert, which most people who are in the desert are trying to get out of the desert. Except nomadic tribes and things like that who live there. But generally, everybody's trying to use the desert to progress somewhere else to a different point, and there's different factors and hazards about being in a desert. Well, the oasis relieves a lot of those hazards that you've been traveling through for a long time. Generally, you may have gotten lost and things like that along the way, multiple sandstorms ripping at your flesh, tons of poisonous animals, very little water, or maybe your rations have gone. But the oasis is a respite from all of those things. You get a break with a drinking hole, a place to sleep, with comfortable sheets, maybe some exotic goods, or a bazaar where you can buy spices and things like that before you finish traveling out of the desert. And an oasis is a good indicator that you found your way to where you're trying to go, because the oasis is, isn't out of the way. It's a watering hole where people are going to venture there, right? Because the oasis that are out of the way it's just a flat thing of water, some animals and things, grasses and whatever might be there. But there really isn't a population. The population for the oasis would happen where a lot of people travel through there, kind of like a trading post, but for the desert. A town run by multiple generations of orphans. I've always thought this was a pretty cool idea. Where kids become adults, and then those adults have their own kids, and then they become grandparents eventually. And they started out as orphans, all of them, but they've come together. They banded together because they were all orphans. The reason they all became orphans is up to you. There's a lot of great ones: plague, famine, war. Those are like the top ones. But then a large family builds on the land and live close together, and then others slowly join. That's the traditional type of thorp, or even a hamlet, where like 8 or 9 different families, and then their extended families come in, and then there you go. That's your population right there of 250, because you just from 8 or 9 families. But it can slowly extend out from that, but it all depends on a lot of things, and we're about to cover that right now. So why are cities formed? Cities are usually formed on trading routes. The larger the city, the better the goods that they have access to trade or to receive in imports or exports. The more exporting you do than importing, you have a net surplus of money. And then that net surplus of money is ideally used to improve the education system, the roads, train the soldiers, the weaponry, the armor, all those types of things comes from that excess bit of money. And so when you become a trading post, you want to grow out from there. Trading posts are never out of the way. They can be, but there has to be a reason, and you have to come up with that reason. That's why there's a trading post on the side of a volcano. When there's nobody nearby for, tens of hundreds of miles. Those could be fun adventures in themselves too. Maybe it's just one person who happens to be stuck, and they're I don't know. They keep changing. They keep changing their facial appearance to be a different merchant, but it's still just one guy, and he's off his rocker. There you go. There you go. We did it. But so the production of goods and exports of those goods is what makes a hamlet into perhaps a town. A village is mostly in place from larger settlements that have their people go out and about looking for exploration purposes, looking for resources, usually ore, stone, wood, gems, minerals, food is a big one. Bears and elk and deer and things like that to get their meat and to get their skins for leather. Leather working and things like that. And a lot of those things happen in villages. A lot of those professions happen in villages, and those villages kind of serve the larger town. They're getting the exports and things like that to give back to the larger town, and then in exchange, that larger town goes and gives them food. They may even give them protection, whether it's weapons or actual stable guard presence, depending on what the resources are and things like that. Villages usually have 250 to 1,000 people, and I didn't even cover the other ones before. Thorps have less than 75, and hamlets have between 75 and 250. The lower end of this number represents an earlier starting point in whatever the time scale that you have in your setting. So the longer your setting has been going, the larger the cities are going to be. And they can even extend past these numbers that I give you a little bit. They're not concrete, and these are just for fantasy numbers. In our own lives, a metropolis isn't 20 to 40,000 people. In our own lives, metropolis is, a million plus. It used to be back in the day, I believe it was like 100,000 plus, but it keeps getting changed according to the population growth. You know what I'm saying? So yours can change as well. But generally Thorps are not on. Well, Thorps are never on the world map. Hamlets are never on the world map, but hamlets may sometimes be on a local or a regional map. Villages are almost never on a world map, but it also depends on the age of your world, how many other cities there are. Are the villages notable for their resources, their exports, or their bar, or an arena, or a religious structure, or a school? Something that they're known for would put them on the map of the world. But generally speaking, these places are not going to be on the world map. Villages just aren't there because you're going to have your world map full of thousands and millions of the it's just a pain really as a developer or a narrator or a DM of these things. You have to flesh all this stuff out, and so it just doesn't make sense to have all of these things on the world map. The party just is never going to be really interested in a city that has not a city but a settlement that has 45 people in it. What are they going to have for the party? They're not going to really probably have any goods for sale, but maybe their own personal goods. And they're not going to really have a place for you to sleep, except maybe their own personal houses. And they may offer you places to sleep for work or something like that. That'd be kind of a fun little thing to do. But, generally speaking, the party is not going to really, you're not going to need to develop these places. Let's see. We've already talked about the villages and the hamlets. They're not on the world map. They may be on the local map. Villages are going to almost always be on the local map. They have ample farmland. They grow their own food instead of foraging, for nuts and berries in the woods and things like that. They have multiple packs, hunting packs of citizenry who go out and hunt for boar, deer, elk, bear, wolves, rabbit, anything that they can for eating purposes. Even fishing, if there's nearby watering holes nearby, that they could go do some fishing or crabbing if they're on the shoreline, things like that. So keep in mind wherever your city is located on their resources. If they're in a more mountainous area, there's probably more ore and more minerals and gems and things like that. Is there a big gold deposits upstream? Well, if there's a waterfall and it's a steady flow, that gold, some of that lighter gold can float down, while the heavier gold gets sucked down underneath the water at the bottom of that waterfall. There's going to be a lot of gold there. That's just a little tidbit to add to your world if you want to. You don't have to or nothing like that. It's just something I happen to know. I like to try to pass on every bit of experience I have in case you may find it useful to yourselves. So let's see what else. The fishing and the hunting. A lot of traders are going to be going back and forth to villages as they bring raw materials perhaps, and then the village turns that into actual goods. Like they bring in the logs, the cut lumber, and then the village makes furniture, and then it goes like that. And the more of those types of trades you have, well, the larger your village is going to be. But generally speaking, a king or a queen or a governor or a mayor or some larger settlement has set out a bunch of people to make a semi-permanent or even a relatively actual permanent location further along the chain, and the village is pumping back resources to that town, and that town is giving the village more resources. And so this happens like that until eventually they become a town. And a town is a population of like 1,000 to 7,500. In modern days, it's larger than that. But like I said, for all of these populations, you got to take that with a grain of salt because it depends on what period of time you're starting out. If your world is not yet really formed, and there really isn't even a map yet because nobody even has charted out all the areas yet. And cities are constantly being found out because they're being explored. Well, then that map. You think about the populations there. They're going to be small cities, very spread out. Maybe rudimentary defenses, with one of the larger cities having better defenses, and that's the power in the area. But they still, relatively speaking, according to the era, are not very powerful yet. But towns have guilds, merchants and tradesmiths, and they have apprentices, and those folks form guilds, and so those folks hold some sway in those towns. And it depends on if it's a plutocracy, run by the many, the meritocracy run by the many with titles, usually generals, things like that. It depends on what type of system you're running. As to who or how many are in charge. But the guilds definitely hold sway. The larger the town, the larger, more merchants out and about that represent that one guild, the more power that one guild is going to hold over a lot of things, even pricing, especially pricing. And they can really hold people ransom. And if they make goods that everybody wants, but they can't make as many, the supply and demand dictates they get to bump the price up at will as much as they want to. And then above that is, cities, 7,500 to 25,000. And then above that even is metropolises, which is 25,000 to 100,000. These are just fantasy numbers. And of course, like I said, before, they can be bumped up or down according to, but it's just a generalization of what I feel. But a city is, a few towns closely put together, and they're working together as one. And that's basically a city. They have more merchants, and they're usually what all the traveling merchants are trying to get to. And the towns are dotting the landscape along the road, along the path that all those merchants come to, and those crossroads, are very, very great places for some of these towns to exist. And the more crossroads go through a town, the bigger that town should be. As a lot of those people decide that they want to stay there because that town offers a lot of services and amenities that they may even want. A lot of drinking and a social life and maybe beautiful gardens or beautiful scenery and landscape naturally incorporated into that town, or just, electricity, maybe even air dependent. And other towns don't have those. Well, you're going to get an influx of citizenry. And so a lot of those cities form metropolises, which is the largest powers in the area. Yet, according to how late it is in the year, you may have, 2 or 3, 4 metropolises in the same region, perhaps, but that's going to cause a conflict. So you have to be ready to build those types of conflicts out. But a metropolis is a place that has existed almost for a very long time, that you'll have an old district or the original architecture built, new architecture built on that. Maybe you'll have several different races that have once owned that land, and it's gone through 3 or 4 different culture changes, and you can see different pieces of those cultures in different areas of the metropolis. But usually there's a shipping port if it's on the ocean. Ocean metropolises will grow leaps and bounds above a landlocked one because you can travel to it by land, and you can also use the ocean to sail. And actually, a lot of the towns that are kind of inland but sort of towards the waterways will build actual detours through the water and dig it up and wide enough and deep enough for water travel out into the ocean. And so then they'll end up becoming something for themselves if they can get that project done. But that's very costly and a lot of manpower. So really, they preferably already have that on the ocean as the water is deep already for larger ships that come in from other continents. So there you go. There's the long and short of it. Hopefully I did cover it pretty good. I left enough leeway there for you to go with. But yeah, D&D, classic metropolises, and I actually pulled some of that up so you can see that real quick. But Baldur's Gate would be one. Neverwinter is one. Let's see here. Did I get it? Where's that? Here it is. Yeah. So where are we at? No, that wasn't it. Oh, well, this was it. Here we go. Sorry, it was a Google search. So here we go. Here's some of the biggest cities in Dungeons and Dragons. Waterdeep on the Sword Coast has 348,000 people. Skuld is on Mulholland, has 205,000 people. Calimport is on Calimshan, which is very good books. I love reading about Calimshan and R.A. Salvatore's work. 193K. So Waterdeep isn't even up here in one of the top ones, but Waterdeep is a pretty big city in itself with like 25,000 people or so, and that's considered a metropolis back in that age category. So really, it just depends on your what year it is, as to how long has your civilization been running to fill those cities up with more people as more generations are born. And then ideally more generations are born faster than the older generations can die off. And then that's how you get a bigger city. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And if you did, hit that subscribe button. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I see I've been getting more subscribers. I can't not thank you enough. That means you enjoyed my content at least a little bit, and that makes me happy. So if I taught you something good, give me one of these. You could go ahead and leave a comment down below. If there's a subject you want me to cover or a video game you want me to play, or anything at all, let me know down in the comment section. My Discord's openly available in the About Me section down below, which I need to update because I haven't done it. I just haven't had the time to really get to that because I got to keep everything else going, and that just falls to the wayside. So sorry about that. I'll probably update that at some point, but it gives a rough generalization of things about me. But I appreciate all of your time and your attention, and thank you so much, and hopefully you're back for the next one, and I'll see you shortly. Take care of yourselves.